He never noticed the curvy black secretary, until the 1,000 roses on her desk unleashed his jealous rage. Naomi Carter learned early that invisibility was a skill. Not the kind you were born with, but the kind you were forced to master when the world decided you took up too much space just by existing. Every morning at exactly 6:10 a.m., Naomi stepped off the subway 2 blocks from Park Global Holdings, smoothing the front of her fitted navy pencil skirt as the city exhaled around her. The building rose ahead of her, steel, glass, and arrogance stacked 47 stories high. People like to call it impressive. Naomi called it exhausting. She adjusted the strap of her leather tote on her shoulder and joined the river of professionals flowing toward the entrance. Men in tailored suits. Women in heels sharp enough to draw blood. Laughter floated. Power hummed. No one noticed her. Not because she didn't stand out, but because she did, and they didn't know what to do with that. Naomi Carter was unignorable in any room that wasn't determined to erase her. Her body curved where it pleased, unapologetic. Her skin carried the warm depth of midnight cocoa. Her natural curls were gathered neatly into a low bun, not to shrink herself, but because she refused to let anyone accuse her of being unprofessional. Still the glances came. Lingering. Curious. Sometimes resentful. Never respectful. By the time she reached the security desk, the guard nodded politely. "Morning, Miss Carter." "Morning," she replied, voice calm, practiced. She always arrived early. She always left late. And she always made sure everything ran smoothly before anyone else even realized there was a problem. The secretary everyone relied on, but no one saw. Naomi's desk sat just outside the glass-walled office of Ethan Park, the youngest CEO in the company's history. 35. Brilliant. Ruthless. And emotionally unavailable to the point of being legendary. From her seat, Naomi could see straight into his world. The minimalist desk. The immaculate shelves. The city skyline stretching behind him like a crown he never bothered to admire. She booted up her computer, fingers already moving. 8 a.m., review schedule. 8:15, confirm international call. 8:30, reorder coffee he didn't drink but insisted on having ready. 9 o'clock, fix the presentation his VP sent with errors he'd never catch. She did all of it without complaint. Because excellence was the one thing no one could take from her. At 8:42 a.m., the elevator chimed. Naomi didn't look up. She didn't need to. She recognized Ethan's presence the way sailors recognize storms, by the shift in air pressure. His footsteps were measured. Confident. Sure. He passed her desk without slowing. "Good morning, Miss Carter." Not Naomi. Never Naomi. "Good morning, Mr. Park," she replied. He didn't hear the slight catch in her voice. He never did. 3 years of almost. Naomi had worked for Ethan Park for 3 years. 3 years of canceled lunches, missed birthdays, and evenings spent fixing crises that weren't hers. She remembered the first day she'd started. How nervous she'd been. How she'd walked into his office with her resume clutched tight, heart racing. He barely glanced up. Experience. 5 years executive support. Typing speed. 95 words per minute. Discretion? Absolute. That had been enough. Not once had he commented on her intelligence beyond, "Good catch," or "Fix this." Not once had he acknowledged her beauty, or her humanity. And Naomi told herself she was grateful for that. After all, attention had never come without cost. The quiet weight of being overlooked. Still, there were moments. Small, stupid moments she hated herself for noticing. Like when Ethan loosened his tie late at night, jaw tense, eyes tired, and she wondered who he was when he wasn't a machine. Or when his hand brushed hers accidentally while exchanging documents, sending a brief, unwanted spark through her chest. She buried those thoughts fast. Crushed them beneath professionalism. Because wishing to be seen by a man like Ethan Park was dangerous. Men like him didn't choose women like her. They overlooked them. Used them. Forgot them. And Naomi refused to be broken by that kind of hope again. The office dynamics. The other executives treated Naomi with polite indifference, or subtle condescension. "She's very capable," one VP once said like it was a surprise. Some assistants avoided her. Others studied her like competition. She overheard whispers sometimes. "She's too confident. She's intimidating. I bet she thinks she's special." Naomi smiled through it all. Let them talk. She knew her worth even if no one else cared to look. A small moment that meant nothing, or everything. That afternoon, Ethan stepped out of his office unexpectedly. "Miss Carter." She looked up immediately. "Yes, sir?" "Did you move my blue folder?" "Yes." You left it in the conference room. I scanned and reordered it. Pause. A fraction longer than usual. Good, he said. And walked away. That was it. One word. But Naomi felt it like a stone dropped into still water. She exhaled slowly. Don't be ridiculous, she told herself. It didn't mean anything. It never did. The end of another invisible day. At 9:17 p.m., Naomi shut down her computer. The floor was quiet now. Lights dimmed. The city glittered below like it was mocking her exhaustion. Ethan was still in his office. Of course he was. She gathered her things quietly, careful not to disturb him. As she walked past his door, he didn't look up. Didn't notice the woman who held his world together walking away. Naomi stepped into the elevator alone. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. Strong. Beautiful. Tired. One day, she whispered to herself, someone will see me. She just didn't know yet that the man who had ignored her for 3 years was about to lose his mind. When the world finally did. Monday mornings at Park Global Holdings were always predictable. Too predictable. Naomi Carter liked it that way. Predictability meant control. Control meant survival. She arrived at 6:05 a.m. sharp, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, already answering overnight emails from international partners who assumed she never slept. The lobby was quiet, polished marble reflecting soft morning lights. Her heels echoed faintly as she crossed the floor, steady, purposeful. Nothing warned her that this day would be different. Not the security guard's friendly nod. Not the hum of the elevator. Not even the faint scent of flowers drifting through the executive floor, so subtle at first that she thought it was perfume. It wasn't until she turned the corner toward her desk that the world stopped. The roses, they were everywhere. Red. Deep, dramatic, impossible red. Roses spilled across her desk like a living thing, lush petals stacked in breathtaking excess. Long stems wrapped in satin ribbon. Boxes layered upon boxes, each one overflowing, until her entire workspace had been transformed into something out of a movie scene. Naomi froze. Her bag slid from her shoulder, thudding softly against the floor. For one surreal moment she thought she'd walked into the wrong office. Then she saw her name. Naomi Carter. Printed in elegant black script on a small white card placed dead center among the flowers. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Oh my God, someone whispered behind her. Footsteps slowed. Then stopped. Phones came out. By 6:12 a.m., the executive floor had forgotten how to breathe. A room that had never looked at her, now couldn't look away. Naomi stood there, unmoving as employees gathered at a cautious distance, pretending to check emails while openly staring. A junior analyst gasped. An assistant whispered, "Is that for her?" Someone else murmured, "Who would do that?" Naomi felt heat creep up her neck. She hated attention. Especially this kind. Because attention always came with judgment. She forced herself to step forward, carefully placing her bag beside the desk, eyes scanning the roses like they might explode. 1,000. She didn't need to count. She could feel the weight of them, the money, the intention, the audacity. Who would send something like this, here? At work? At his office? Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the card. The message that changed everything. She opened it. For the woman who deserves to be chosen openly. J. That was all. No explanation. No apology. No attempt to hide. Naomi's throat tightened. She knew who Jay was. Jason Miller, former senior consultant. Brilliant, kind, and very clear months ago about wanting more than she was ready to give. He'd left the company quietly after a restructuring. She'd thought that chapter was closed. Apparently, he hadn't. Her first instinct wasn't excitement. It was fear. Because she knew exactly whose attention this would attract. Whispers turned sharp. By 7 a.m., the office buzzed like a disturbed hive. This is insane. Do you know how expensive that is? Is she dating a billionaire? Wow. I didn't know she was like that. Like that. Naomi sat carefully at her desk, posture straight, hands folded, ignoring the roses crowding her keyboard. She answered emails. Scheduled meetings. Pretended her heart wasn't racing. She didn't smile. She didn't explain. And somehow that made people stare harder. The elevator doors open. At exactly 8:42 a.m. the elevator chimed. Naomi felt it before she saw it. The air shifted. The whispers died instantly. Ethan Park stepped onto the floor. Immaculate as always, dark tailored suit, crisp white shirt, hair perfectly styled like chaos had never dared touch him. He took 3 steps. Then stopped. His gaze locked onto the roses. All of them. His jaw tightened so sharply Naomi thought she heard it click. "What," he said slowly, "is this?" No one answered. No one breathed. His eyes moved from the roses, to the card, to Naomi. For the first time in 3 years. He didn't look through her. He looked at her. The question that felt like an accusation. "Miss Carter," he said, voice low, controlled. "Yes, sir," she replied evenly. "Who sent those?" Every eye in the room burned into her back. She met his gaze without flinching. "A delivery, Mr. Park." His expression darkened. "A delivery," he repeated. "To my executive floor." "Yes, sir." "How many?" She paused. Just long enough to be deliberate. 1,000. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. "And why?" he asked tightly. "Are they on your desk?" Naomi swallowed. "Because they're addressed to me." Silence slammed into the room. Jealousy, sharp, sudden, unfamiliar. Ethan didn't understand the sensation crawling up his spine. He told himself it was irritation. Unprofessional. Excessive. Distracting. That's all. But then his eyes betrayed him, tracing Naomi in a way they never had before. The curve of her waist as she stood. The calm in her face. The confidence in her voice. Had she always looked like that? Who had the audacity to mark her territory so boldly? "Remove them," he said abruptly. Naomi stiffened. "Excuse me?" "The flowers," he snapped. "They're inappropriate for the workplace." Her chin lifted. "They were sent to me, sir. They don't interfere with my duties." "They interfere with my office," he shot back. A beat. Then Naomi did something she'd never done before. She didn't back down. "I'll have them moved after business hours." Ethan stared at her. Actually stared. The secretary who never challenged him had just drawn a line. And for reasons he couldn't name. He didn't cross it. Aftershocks. The rest of the day was chaos. Ethan canceled 2 meetings. Snapped at his CFO. Lost focus during a board call. Every time he glanced through the glass walls of his office, there they were. The roses. And behind them, Naomi. "Come, boys." Unmoved. Men stopped by her desk more than usual. Laughter followed. Curiosity lingered. Each time Ethan felt something twist inside his chest. Hot. Possessive. Ugly. By evening he realized the truth he didn't want to face. The problem wasn't the flowers. It was the fact that someone else had seen her, valued her, claimed her presence, before he ever did. And that realization? It terrified him. Ethan Park had built his entire life on control. Control over time. Control over people. Control over outcomes. Control was the reason he was CEO at 35 while men twice his age answered to him. Control was why his voice never shook in boardrooms, why his name made investors listen, why crises bent instead of breaking under his command. So when he woke up Tuesday morning with the image of red roses flooding Naomi Carter's desk, the tightness in his chest irritated him far more than it should have. He told himself it was distraction. Nothing more. A restless morning. The shower ran too hot. The mirror reflected a man who looked the same, but felt wrong. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks with unnecessary force, jaw clenched. His phone buzzed with messages from directors and overseas partners. He answered them sharply, efficiently. Still, his mind drifted. Who sends 1,000 roses to an office? The excess bothered him. The audacity. The implication. Someone hadn't just admired Naomi. They had claimed her publicly. By the time he arrived at Park Global Holdings, Ethan had convinced himself that the problem was professionalism. That was all. It had nothing to do with the way Naomi's calm defiance replayed in his head. Nothing to do with the unfamiliar heat that flared when he remembered how steady her eyes had been when she challenged him. Nothing at all. Seeing her everywhere. The executive floor looked normal. Too normal. The roses were gone, moved overnight to storage per Naomi's instructions. Yet the space they'd occupied felt empty. Ethan stepped out of the elevator and slowed unconsciously. Naomi sat at her desk, typing. Just typing. The same way she always had. But now, he noticed things he'd never allowed himself to notice before. The elegant curve of her shoulders beneath her blouse. The way her lips pressed together in concentration. The quiet authority in her posture. She looked up. Their eyes met. "Good morning, Mr. Park." The words were the same. The effect was not. Something in Ethan's chest shifted, sharp, sudden. He nodded once and walked into his office, shutting the glass door harder than necessary. Distraction turns dangerous. Meetings followed. Reports were presented. Charts were explained. Ethan heard none of it. His eyes kept drifting, to the space just beyond the glass walls. To Naomi. To the men who stopped by her desk now. A junior executive leaned in, smiling. Too close. Another lingered, laughing softly at something she said. Ethan's fingers curled into fists beneath the table. Unprofessional, he thought. He made a note to remind staff about workplace boundaries. But the thought rang hollow. Because the truth slithered through his mind, unwelcome and undeniable. He didn't care about boundaries. He cared that they were smiling at her. The question that slipped out. By noon, Ethan's patience was gone. He exited his office abruptly. Miss Carter. She looked up instantly. Yes, sir? When is your lunch break? The question startled her. Usually 1, she answered carefully. Cancel my 1 o'clock. Naomi blinked. Sir? I said cancel it. Yes, sir. He turned to leave, then stopped. Who was that man you were speaking with earlier? The air thickened. Naomi met his gaze, expression neutral. Which one? The fact that there were options ignited something dark and sharp inside him. The one from finance. He had a question about a report, she replied. Nothing more. Nothing less. Ethan nodded stiffly and retreated, pulse pounding. What am I doing? He thought. The answer frightened him. Naomi's perspective. Calm on the surface. Naomi noticed the change. She wasn't blind. Ethan's sudden attention followed her like a shadow. Subtle, intense, unsettling. She felt it when he paused too long outside his office. When his gaze lingered a fraction longer than necessary. When his voice softened without explanation. It made her wary. Men didn't suddenly notice women like her without reason. And when powerful men did, there was always a price. She kept her responses professional. Her posture firm. Her emotions locked down tight. She refused to mistake curiosity for care. The name that shouldn't matter. Late afternoon, Ethan called her into his office. Sit, he said. She did. I reviewed your quarterly projections, he continued. They're impressive. Thank you, sir. Pause. Jason Miller, he said suddenly. That's who sent the roses. Naomi didn't flinch. Yes. Ethan studied her closely. You're involved with him? That's personal. His jaw tightened. Is he still in your life? She folded her hands calmly. Why does it matter? The question landed between them like a challenge. Ethan didn't have an answer that didn't expose him. So he said nothing. Dismissed her. Watched her leave. And felt something dangerously close to regret. The truth he couldn't escape. That night Ethan stayed late. Again. But for the first time it wasn't work keeping him there. It was the echo of Naomi's voice. The dignity in her silence. The realization that he had underestimated her. Not just professionally but personally. She wasn't flattered by his attention. She wasn't chasing his approval. She didn't need him. And that, more than anything, unsettled him. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the darkened glass walls. For years women had pursued him. None had made him feel this unbalanced. This threatened. It dawned on him slowly, painfully. He wasn't annoyed. He wasn't curious. He was jealous. And jealousy was a weakness he had never learned how to control. A dangerous shift. As midnight approached, Ethan made a decision. Quiet, unspoken, irreversible. He would not ignore Naomi Carter anymore. He would watch. Learn. Understand. Because whatever had been awakened inside him by 1,000 red roses, it wasn't going away. And for the first time in his perfectly ordered life, Ethan Park was afraid of what he might become if he let himself want something he could lose. By Wednesday morning, the balance of Park Global Holdings had tilted. No announcement had been made. No memo circulated. No meeting called. Yet everyone felt it. Because Ethan Park, the man who once ruled the executive floor like a distant god, was no longer untouched by what happened beyond his glass walls. And Naomi Carter stood at the center of it. A different kind of morning. Naomi arrived at 6:07 a.m., 2 minutes later than usual. Not because she was careless, but because she'd allowed herself, for the first time in years, to take her time choosing what to wear. She stood in her apartment that morning, staring at her reflection longer than necessary. Not with doubt. With decision. She chose a deep emerald dress, professional, elegant, fitted without apology. Her hair fell in soft, controlled curls around her shoulders instead of being pulled tight. Minimal makeup. Gold studs at her ears. She wasn't dressing for anyone. She was dressing as herself. When she stepped onto the executive floor, conversations paused. Not openly, but noticeably. Naomi didn't slow her stride. She had learned long ago that confidence unsettled people more than beauty ever could. Ethan notices, whether he wants to or not. Ethan noticed immediately. The moment the elevator doors opened, his attention snapped to her desk like a magnet. Naomi stood, reviewing documents, sunlight catching in her hair. Something in his chest tightened, sharp, possessive, unwelcome. She changed something, he thought. And worse. You liked it? "Good morning, Mr. Park," she said when she saw him. Her voice was the same. But the effect wasn't. "Good morning," he replied, slower than usual. He walked into his office, but the glass walls felt thinner today, like they couldn't protect him from the awareness pressing in. Subtle changes, loud consequences. The day unfolded differently. Ethan called Naomi into meetings she'd never attended before, not as a note-taker but as a contributor. "What do you think?" he asked during a strategy session. The room stilled. Executives turned toward her, surprised. Naomi didn't hesitate. She spoke clearly, confidently, with insight sharp enough to shift the entire conversation. Ethan watched as heads nodded, as respect replaced curiosity, as Naomi Carter took up space without asking permission, and something inside him fractured. The looks he couldn't ignore. Back at her desk, Naomi noticed the attention too. But unlike before, it didn't make her shrink. A senior partner smiled warmly. A department head asked for her opinion. A junior associate lingered, clearly impressed. Ethan saw all of it. Every glance felt like theft. When he finally stepped out of his office, his voice cut through the air. "Miss Carter." She turned. "Yes, sir?" "Come with me." The tone wasn't a request. But Naomi didn't rush. She gathered her tablet slowly, deliberately, and followed him into his office. The glass walls slid shut. Behind closed glass. Ethan paced once before turning to face her. "You're different today," he said. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" He struggled to articulate it. "You're drawing attention." She met his gaze evenly. "Is that a problem?" "It can be." "For whom?" The question was calm. But it challenged everything. Ethan exhaled sharply. "You work for me." "Yes," she replied. "Not belong to you." The words landed hard. He stared at her. In 3 years, no one had ever spoken to him like that, especially not her. And instead of anger, he felt something dangerously close to admiration. The invitation that changed the rules. That evening, the building emptied slowly. Naomi finished organizing files, shutting down her computer. "Miss Carter." She turned to see Ethan standing in his doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. "I need to review tomorrow's presentation," he said. "Over dinner." Naomi paused. Her instincts screamed caution. "Is this work-related?" she asked. "Yes." "Then we can do it here." A flicker of frustration crossed his face. "I'd prefer somewhere quieter." She studied him. "Not the CEO. The man." "I already have plans," she said. The words tasted powerful. "What kind of plans?" he asked too quickly. She didn't answer immediately. "Personal ones." The silence stretched. Ethan felt it then, that sudden, unfamiliar sting. Jealousy. Real. Sure. Undeniable. Naomi draws the line. "I need you to understand something," Naomi continued calmly. "My time outside this office is mine." Ethan nodded stiffly. "Of course." But his expression betrayed him. As she walked away, something shifted irreversibly. Naomi had stopped orbiting him. And Ethan Park had never felt so off balance. The office takes notice. By Friday, rumors were rampant. "Have you noticed the CEO lately? He's different. He actually listens to her. Do you think something's going on?" Naomi ignored it. She focused on her work, on herself, on the quiet satisfaction of being seen, without being owned. Ethan, meanwhile, unraveled in silence. He found himself watching the clock, tracking her movements, noticing when she laughed softly at someone else's joke. Each moment chipped away at his control. The moment that sealed it. As Naomi prepared to leave that evening, Ethan spoke before he could stop himself. "Are you seeing someone?" She turned slowly. "That's not appropriate, Mr. Park." He knew she was right. But the question was already out there. "I need to know," he said quietly. She held his gaze. "No," she said. "You don't." Then she walked away. And Ethan stood alone in his office, staring at his reflection in the glass. For the first time in his life, power didn't protect him. It exposed him. Because the truth was unavoidable now. Naomi Carter wasn't beneath him. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't his. And the more he tried to reclaim control, The more he realized he was already losing it. By the following week, pretending had become a full-time job. Pretending nothing had changed. Pretending the air between them wasn't charged. Pretending that every glance didn't feel like a conversation neither of them dared to start. Naomi Carter was good at pretending. She had learned how early. Naomi's armor. She woke before dawn every morning, the city still quiet enough to think. Her apartment was modest but intentional, warm earth tones, soft lighting, shelves lined with books she actually read. It was a space she had built after leaving behind a life where she had once loved too openly and paid dearly for it. She stood in front of her mirror now, fastening her necklace with steady hands. Do not mistake attention for intention, she reminded herself. Ethan Park's sudden interest unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Because it wasn't crude. It wasn't careless. It was controlled, and that made it dangerous. Men who noticed her body were predictable. Men who noticed her mind and then tried to step closer? Those were the ones who could hurt her. Ethan's sleepless nights. Ethan hadn't slept properly in days. His penthouse felt too large. Too quiet. Too empty. Every night, his thoughts circled back to Naomi, her calm defiance, her unflinching boundaries, the way she walked away from him without hesitation. No one had ever done that. People needed him. Wanted his approval. Naomi Carter didn't. And the truth gnawed at him relentlessly. He didn't want to possess her. He wanted to be chosen. A crisis forces proximity. The opportunity, and the danger, came on Thursday afternoon. An overseas investor pulled out without warning, threatening a multimillion-dollar deal. Panic rippled through the executive floor. Ethan summoned Naomi immediately. I need you, he said bluntly. She followed him into his office, already scanning emails, mind switching gears instantly. They worked side by side for hours, strategizing, drafting counteroffers, preparing emergency projections. The tension between them simmered just beneath the surface. At one point, Naomi leaned over his desk to point at a figure. Her sleeve brushed his arm. Electric. Ethan stilled. So did she. For one breathless second, neither of them moved. Then Naomi stepped back, professional mask snapping firmly into place. Here, she said calmly. This adjustment might stabilize the margin. Ethan nodded, but his pulse thundered. The almost confession. By the time the crisis was contained, it was nearly midnight. The office was empty. Rain streaked down the glass walls, blurring the city into shimmering light. Naomi gathered her things. Thank you, Ethan said quietly. I couldn't have done that without you. She hesitated. You could have, she replied. It just would have taken longer. A small smile tugged at his lips. Still, he said. You matter here. The words hung between them. Naomi turned to face him fully. Why now? She asked softly. Ethan frowned. Why now what? Why do I matter now? She pressed. I've always done this work. He didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was dangerous. Because admitting it would change everything. I was blind, he said finally. And I hate that it took someone else's attention for me to realize it. Her chest tightened. That's not flattering, she said. I know. Silence stretched again, thick, intimate, terrifying. For a moment it felt like he might say more. For a moment, Naomi wondered if she wanted him to. Naomi draws her boundary, again. I won't be someone's awakening, she said quietly. I won't be the woman a man notices only after the world points her out. Ethan's throat worked. That's not. It is, she said gently but firmly. And I need you to hear it. He nodded slowly. I hear you. But the way he looked at her said he felt it, and that scared him more than rejection ever had. The dinner that changed nothing, and everything. The next evening Ethan made another attempt, careful, restrained. Would you consider dinner? He asked. No work. No pressure. Naomi studied him. Not the CEO. The man trying awkwardly to step out from behind power. I'll think about it, she said. It wasn't a yes. But it wasn't a no. And that sliver of hope lodged itself in Ethan's chest like a promise. The office reacts. The change didn't go unnoticed. Executives whispered. Assistants speculated. Some were curious. Others were threatened. Naomi felt the shift keenly, but she didn't apologize for it. She continued doing her job with excellence. Continued leaving on time. Continued living her life outside those glass walls. And that, more than anything, unsettled Ethan. Because he couldn't control it. The quiet realization. Late that night, alone in his office, Ethan stared out at the city. He finally understood the truth he'd been avoiding. This wasn't infatuation. It wasn't ego. It wasn't jealousy alone. It was the slow, frightening realization that Naomi Carter had become essential to him, not as an employee, but as a presence he didn't want to lose. And the cruel irony? The more he wanted her, the more he knew he had to let her choose. Naomi went home that night conflicted. Ethan stayed behind, changed. Neither of them slept well, because they both understood now. This wasn't a game of power anymore. It was a risk. And in Chapter 6, that risk would turn dangerous. The warning signs didn't arrive loudly. They slipped in quietly, like a chill beneath the skin. Naomi felt it first. The unease she couldn't shake. It started with the emails. Anonymous, brief, polite enough to seem harmless. You look good lately. Didn't know secretaries got so much attention. Must be nice to be noticed. Naomi deleted them without comment. She had learned long ago not to invite fear by naming it. Still, she became more aware of her surroundings. Held her keys tighter when walking home. Checked reflections in windows. Took different routes. She told herself she was overreacting. Until the roses returned. Not 1,000 this time. Just one. Left on her desk before dawn. No card. Ethan senses the shift. Ethan noticed immediately. Not the rose but Naomi. She was quieter. Sharper. Watching. Are you all right? He asked mid-morning, voice low. I'm fine, she replied automatically. He didn't believe her. When he pressed further, she finally showed him the emails. Ethan read them once. Then again. His jaw tightened, expression darkening. This stops now, he said. Naomi shook her head. It's probably nothing. No, he said flatly. It's not. For the first time she saw something raw in his eyes. Fear. And anger, directed not at her but at whoever dared cross this line. The mistake he didn't know he made. What Naomi didn't know was that Ethan's jealousy, his visible attention, his sudden protection, had drawn the wrong kind of eyes. A rival executive. A spurned investor. Someone who had mistaken proximity for leverage. That evening Ethan confronted a board member privately, words sharp and unyielding. If this is about pressuring me, he said coldly, you've miscalculated. The man only smiled. Ethan left the meeting unaware he'd escalated something far beyond office politics. The night everything breaks. The incident happened on a Friday. Rain-soaked streets. Late hour. Naomi had stayed late finishing reports, refusing Ethan's offer to walk her out. I'm fine, she'd insisted. She wasn't. Halfway to her car, footsteps followed. Too close. Too steady. Her phone slipped from her fingers as a voice spoke behind her. You should have stayed invisible. Fear surged, but Naomi didn't scream. She turned. And froze. Ethan arrives too late, and just in time. Ethan had felt it. The sudden, unbearable certainty that something was wrong. He left his office without explanation, drove like instinct was guiding him. When he saw Naomi cornered near the parking structure, something inside him snapped. Step away from her, he commanded. The man laughed. Wrong move. Ethan didn't strike him, not yet. His voice, however, was lethal. You have no idea who you've threatened. Security arrived moments later. Ethan had already called ahead. The man was taken away. Naomi stood shaking. Not from fear anymore, but from what she'd almost lost. The aftermath. Ethan wrapped his jacket around her shoulders without thinking. She didn't pull away. They sat in his car, rain hammering the windshield, silence heavy and intimate. I didn't want to be a problem, Naomi whispered. You were never the problem, he replied hoarsely. My silence was. She looked at him then, really looked. You waited too long, she said. I know. Truths that can't be taken back. At her apartment, Ethan didn't follow her inside. He stood in the doorway, hands clenched, voice raw. I can't keep pretending this is just work, he said. I care about you. More than I should. More than I planned. Naomi's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I won't be protected only when I'm in danger, she said softly. I need consistency. I need choice. He nodded. I'm asking for the chance to prove that. She studied him for a long moment. Then she stepped back. Not tonight. The door closed gently. But not finally. The reckoning. That night, Ethan dismantled everything that had allowed this to happen. He fired a board member. Reassigned security. Took responsibility publicly. For the first time, power wasn't a weapon. It was accountability. And Naomi? She lay awake, heart pounding, knowing something had shifted permanently. Fear had forced honesty. And honesty had stripped away excuses. They were no longer circling each other. The danger had drawn a line. In Chapter 7, Ethan would have to decide whether he was brave enough to step beyond power. And Naomi would decide whether trust was worth the risk. Naomi Carter didn't go to work on Monday. For the first time in 3 years she woke up, stared at the ceiling and chose herself. The events of Friday night still echoed in her chest. The fear, the shock, the way Ethan's voice had broken when he admitted the truth he'd been avoiding for weeks. I care about you. Words were easy. Consistency was not. She needed space to decide whether Ethan Park was a man capable of more than realization, whether he was capable of change. Silence that meant everything. Ethan noticed her absence immediately. Her desk was empty. No neatly stacked files. No perfectly aligned pens. No calm presence anchoring the chaos of his floor. He stood at the glass wall longer than necessary, hands in his pockets, chest tight. She's taking personal leave, HR said carefully. He nodded once. But inside he understood the truth. Naomi wasn't running. She was evaluating. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Park had no leverage. A man stripped of power. Without Naomi, the office felt louder. Messier. Less precise. Mistakes slipped through. Meetings ran long. Ethan caught himself reaching for his phone, to ask her opinion, to hear her voice, only to stop short every time. This was the cost of taking someone for granted. And he paid it fully. That evening, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, sleeves rolled up, tie discarded, staring at the city lights he once thought defined success. None of it mattered without someone to share it with. For the first time, he didn't plan a strategy. He wrote a letter. Naomi's choice. Naomi spent the weekend with her sister, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and truth. You're allowed to be loved loudly, her sister said gently. But only if it doesn't cost you your dignity. Those words stayed with Naomi. She thought about Ethan, not the CEO, not the powerful man, but the one who stood in the rain, shaken, admitting he'd failed her. She didn't forgive easily. But she believed in growth. So on Tuesday morning, she returned to the office. The rose. Her desk was different. Gone were the screens, the files, the sterile perfection. In their place, one rose. Deep red. Fresh. Unadorned. No spectacle. No audience. Just one. And a handwritten note. Naomi's breath caught as she read it. I won't ask you to come back because I need you. I'll ask you to stay only if you want to. Not as my secretary. Not as something I overlooked. But as the woman I failed to see, and now choose openly. Her hands trembled slightly. Behind her, the glass door opened. The apology that changed everything. Ethan stood there, not in a suit but in a simple shirt, sleeves rolled up. Vulnerable. I've resigned as your direct superior, he said quietly. Effective immediately. You'll report to the COO if you stay. Naomi turned slowly. You didn't have to do that. I did, he replied. Because I won't ask you to choose me while I still hold power over you. Silence wrapped around them. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued. I'm asking for the chance to earn your trust, outside these walls on equal ground. Naomi searched his face. Not for perfection. For sincerity. She saw it. The public choice. Later that week, at a company-wide address, Ethan did something no one expected. He acknowledged Naomi Carter publicly. Not as his assistant. But as the strategist who had saved a failing deal. As the professional who deserved recognition long before roses arrived. As a woman whose value had nothing to do with who noticed her. The applause was thunderous. Naomi stood tall. Seen. Respected. Oh. The beginning, not the end. That evening, Ethan waited outside the building. No driver. No agenda. Just him. Dinner? He asked. Naomi smiled softly. Dinner, she agreed. They walked side by side into the city, not rushed, not hidden. Chosen. The final truth. Love hadn't arrived with 1,000 roses. It arrived with accountability. With restraint. With humility. And when Ethan finally reached for Naomi's hand, she let him. Not because he was powerful, but because he had learned how to see her.